Hi, welcome. If you don't know me already, my name's Christie and I'm currently 10 weeks pregnant with our second little baby. We already have a 1-year-old called Grace, who is the most sassy and gorgeous little character, and she is going to be the most amazing big sister when this baby arrives in this December coming. I just announced our pregnancy yesterday on Instagram, and I put out a little question sticker on my stories and said if you had any questions then to send them in. So today I'm going to be filming a pregnancy Q&A, and there's some pretty juicy questions in here, so it's worth sticking around and watching those. And if you like what you see and want to follow this pregnancy journey along with me, then please subscribe as well, because I'll be putting out lots of pregnancy content over the coming months. By far the most asked question was this pregnancy a surprise or planned? And I like to think of it personally as a hybrid between the two. I had previously said that I wanted an age gap of around 3 years, and that kind of worked with like nursery and all those kinds of things and all the practical kind of considerations when you're having a child. Steve came to me and said actually he was ready to have another one and he wanted to have a smaller age gap, and we kind of discussed it for a while and then decided that actually yes, that was the right thing for our family. So it was planned, I would say. However, literally no sooner had we kind of decided that I found out I was pregnant. So it all happened really quickly, and I think we were both quite surprised by how quickly it happened. And I can come on to that in the later questions, because I've had some questions about trying to conceive and all that kind of stuff. But literally the first month that we decided we wanted to have a baby was the month that I conceived in. So we were very lucky this time round. The next question was, what is the age gap between this baby and Grace? So Grace will be about 21 months when the baby is born. So I'll have 2 under 2 for at least a few months. And I've had a lot of people also say that I'm crazy and that, you know, it's going to be manic having a toddler and a baby, and I get all of that. But, you know, I think when you know that the age gap's right for your family, you know that it's right and you just make it work. So we're really excited as well that they're going to be quite close in age, and I'm hoping that that will make them really close as siblings, and I want them to get along and do things together, and hopefully where they're that much closer in age, they'll share common interests and have a lot of that common ground to start with. So I guess that leads nicely into the next question, which was about trying to conceive. Do I have any tips, certain things that I think helped this time around? So with Grace, our trying to conceive journey wasn't as straightforward. It took us 6 months to fall pregnant with Grace, and in that time I also unfortunately suffered a miscarriage. So this time I was definitely expecting to have a bit more of the same. Not so much the miscarriage. I was and am still hopeful that that wouldn't happen more than once. But definitely I was thinking that it would take a bit longer than it did to fall pregnant with Grace. And certainly I thought that with second babies, I've heard that like secondary infertility is higher, so you're more likely to struggle second time around to conceive. So I had all of this in my mind, and I think more so than the first time when I was pregnant with Grace, I was prepared for that. So it was a really pleasant surprise when I fell pregnant quickly with this baby. In terms of trying to conceive tips, I think the thing that helped the most was before I fell pregnant with this baby, I wasn't on any form of hormonal contraception, and I haven't been on any form of hormonal contraception since before Grace was even born. So I was on the implant before Grace and I had that taken out, and that's when we had the 6 months of trying and the loss. After I had Grace, I had the copper coil put in, which is a non-hormonal form of contraception, and I really struggled with the side effects of the copper coil and with bleeding, so I had that taken out probably at the start of this year, or maybe a couple months before Grace turned 1, so a good few months before we started trying. And the method of contraception I was using was called the Fertility Awareness Method, and I was using an app called Natural Cycles to track that. So you take your body temperature with a thermometer in your mouth every day as soon as you wake up, and that helps track your fertility in the app. And it will tell you when your fertile days are and when your non-fertile days are. Obviously, when you're trying to avoid pregnancy, you avoid having sex on the fertile days. And then when we decided we were ready to try for the pregnancy, we did the complete opposite. And yeah, fell pregnant in that first month. So, I mean, I was really, really fortunate. I'm not suggesting that that was the only contributing factor, but I think a big contributing factor this time around was just knowing my cycle inside and out, being off of hormonal contraception for an extended period of time, and knowing when I ovulated, and obviously specifically having sex on those days. Sorry, if you're wondering, I have got a bit of a cold, which is why I sound a bit bunged up, and also just finding it quite difficult to talk so much because I'm already feeling a little bit out of breath, but I will try my best. And I have done a COVID test, so I know it's not COVID, which leads me nicely onto this question, which is, have I had or will I be having the COVID vaccine when I become eligible? So I'm not actually eligible now for the COVID vaccine because I'm under 30, so I'm waiting for the age gap to come down so that I will be eligible for my vaccine. And I have decided that when I am eligible, I will have the vaccine done even though I'm pregnant. They haven't done specific trials on pregnant women, and that's because it would be unethical to do so. They don't do trials on pregnant women for things that aren't specific to pregnant women, if that makes sense. So quite a lot of the vaccines, they won't do specific pregnancy trials and stuff, and I'm completely comfortable with that. There's nothing in the vaccine that they know to be harmful to unborn babies, and also my risk of catching COVID in the third trimester and the risks that follow on from that are quite bad, really. I have done my research on it, and I know that the risk of stillborn doubles and the risk of premature labour doubles if you catch COVID in your third trimester. So on the balance of probabilities and on risks, and given that some pregnant women have had the COVID vaccine, they've done some research into this in America where more women have had the vaccine and they haven't recorded any kind of negative side effects above and beyond what they're recording for non-pregnant women. On the balance of all of that, I have decided that when my time comes, I will have the COVID vaccine. I like this question, and I think this comes about because if you look on my Instagram at our announcement photos, Steve is so much taller than me, and someone has asked what the height difference is between me and Steve. So Steve is 6'4" and I'm 5'3", so there is over a foot of height difference between us. Grace is definitely taken after Steve. She's quite tall. She was always tracking ahead on her fundal height. When I was pregnant with her, she was always on the 90th centile. And I think she's come down now, but she's still on the 75th centile for height. So she definitely gets that from Steve. And yeah, I am the short ass of the family. This question, I think, worries a lot of women, and it's, am I scared of giving birth second time round? And the answer is, frankly, yes, I am. And for that reason, and because if you have followed my journey on Instagram as well, or you can go over and have a look on there at my birth story, I had quite a traumatic first birth, not just in the delivery, but also the recovery for both me and Grace was really, really poor. So we both were in hospital for over a week, and both of us had quite severe infections that had to be treated with antibiotics in hospital through a drip. So it was all very stressful, and there was points where she was having lumbar punctures and stuff to kind of determine how bad this infection was, and it was just a really scary and traumatizing time in our lives. So at the time I was told that second time around I should be offered a C-section, and I have actually requested that now. So I am nervous for birth, but in a different way. Now I'm nervous about obviously the risks that come along with a major surgery like a C-section, and that all that follows along with that, the recovery and everything. I don't for a second think that it would be a walk in the park to have a C-section, and I don't think it's the easy way out. But what I kind of said to my midwife was, if you can promise me and guarantee here and now that I'm going to go into my birth and have a water birth without pain relief, and it's going to be really straightforward and no complications after birth, then I will do it tomorrow. And she was so supportive, and she was like, I can't guarantee that for you, and if you feel like you'd be happier with a C-section, then I'll support you 100%. So currently the plan is to go ahead and have a C-section, and that will be right at the end of December, sometime in the last week, I think. The next question was, have I experienced any sickness this time? And if you go back and watch my weekly updates, if I haven't uploaded them already, I will start drip feeding them on. I have experienced some pretty wild sickness this time. Like, it was really bad with Grace, and I don't know whether I just don't remember how bad it was with Grace or whether it's actually worse this time, but it does feel so much worse. And that's been a real struggle for me. I feel like at points it's really got me down and made me suffer in terms of my mental health. But I have some good medication that I'm taking now to try and relieve the anti-sickness. I'm taking 6 of those a day, and that's really, really helping. So before I was probably being sick 3 or 4 times a day. Now I'm probably sick once every couple of days, and the nausea kind of pokes through now and then, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was. So I can't imagine what it would be like if I wasn't on any tablets whatsoever. But yeah, the sickness has been pretty wild this time around. Someone has asked if we are going to be finding out the gender of this baby. So we didn't find out with Grace, and we left it a complete surprise until the birth. I was so convinced that she was going to be a boy, and so was Steve, and I think he came around to the idea of having a girl quicker than I did. Not that I didn't want a girl, but I was just so overwhelmed with shock, and I couldn't believe that she was here and she was a girl, that it didn't really impact my bond with her. But my first initial reaction when she was born was just shock rather than that glow of love, because I just couldn't believe we hadn't had a boy, because of how big she was and all of the symptoms I'd experienced. But this time we have decided to find out the gender. The surprise was very much, I know Steve won't mind me saying this, but that was what he wanted and that was his idea, and I was happy to go along with that. And this time around I said, actually, I understand that he would have a surprise again. That's not really what I want, and he's very happy for us to find out. We do actually already know the gender because we did an early DNA test to find out. So we know what we're having and we're over the moon, but we are waiting until we've had that 20-week anomaly scan to confirm what we're having. And then we will announce, because I don't want to get it wrong, and it's therefore keeping me in check in terms of my purchasing, my browsing for baby clothes, etc. I'm just trying to keep it under wraps until that 20-week scan when we know for sure. But we do know the gender, and yes, it was always the plan to find out for this pregnancy. Someone has asked if I found it harder this time round, and I mean, I found it harder in some ways, but not others. I think one of the main hardships for me in the first pregnancy that I had was that I was going to work, and I found that so difficult because I was literally dragging myself out of bed to go and getting ready and trying to hide all of this sickness that I was feeling. And I wasn't feeling myself, and you know, it's you're just tired all the time anyway. So that was really, really difficult for me when I was pregnant with Grace. This time around, obviously it's COVID at the minute and we're all working from home. So working from home has been so much better for me. If I'm not feeling 100%, I just whack my hair in a bun and I just go off camera all day, and I don't go on camera on my Zoom meetings and stuff. So I feel like I've been able to hide it more, and I can be a bit more flexible about things because I'm at home. So in that respect, this pregnancy has actually been easier. Obviously, running around after a 1-year-old is not easy, and I think actually I will find that harder as time goes on and I get a bit bigger and a bit less mobile. I'll find that a lot harder this time around. But so far, I would compare them both and say they're pretty similar, although they've been hard in different ways. And the final question was, how did we know we were ready to have another baby? So like I say, it was very much kind of Steve's wanting to have another baby that put us on this path. I would say that the things that we considered were, would we be able to afford to have another baby in the time frame that we were thinking about, in terms of nursery fees, also obviously me taking maternity leave and going down to stat pay. Would we be able to afford all of that? We also considered what the right sort of age gap would be for Grace, and one of the things that we really liked the idea of was that they would be close in age and therefore hopefully have a lot in common, have a lot of common ground and be quite close as siblings. I think, to be honest, I did quite a lot of research into this area. Like, I was just Googling what's the right age gap, and I don't think there's any one age gap that works for any family. There are pros and cons, obviously, to any age gap. One of the big pros that I think this time around is that Grace isn't out of baby stage with us going into baby stage, so it's not like she's out of nappies, she's feeding herself, she's completely self-sufficient, and we're going back to doing the baby stage all over again. We're kind of already in that routine to do it all over again. But equally, I know that if you have a bigger age gap, your older children can help with the younger ones, etc. So I don't think there's any right age gap, it's just whatever works for you and your family. So that's all of the main questions that I've picked out to answer today. If you have any others, then pop them in the comments and I'll try and go through and answer some of those. But thank you so much for joining me. Like I say, if you want to follow this pregnancy journey, then please do subscribe and follow me over on Instagram, where I'll be sharing a lot of pregnancy content. And I can hear that Grace is up now, so better go. But thanks so much for watching. Bye.